Hello, I'm here with Elliott. What stands out to me is that you've been creating real connection and helping people reconnect with relationships and community in a grounded and human way. You've also been building your own future through creativity, landmark, textiles, and now welding, actually creating something real in your life instead of staying stuck. And this is what the Crossing Point's about. Real people, real conversations, and their journey from survival into something more. So Elliott, tell me what's happening in your life right now.
I have been participating more with our local queer community in particular. We have a Pride Center that opened a couple years ago, and each year it's been growing and getting bigger, which means that they need more volunteers to help set up the events, get the word out, prep the spaces, and help to raise any funds that are necessary. Um, they also do most of their events on church grounds, and that church is going to be opening up a volunteer opportunity later this month where they feed the hungry. So it just takes them a morning of Saturdays where they prep the food and then where they take the food out to, the homeless and such. And I'm really interested in getting involved in both of these because I just feel like it's really important to engage with the community and to help support uh, our members of the community because it just feels like what we're kind of supposed to do in a sense of we're humans and like we're here to take care of each other kind of sense. That's how I feel.
That sounds great. Thanks so much for being so present in your community and contributing. And I makes sense. Here we are in the community pillar. Leadership in giving back and being in reciprocal relationship with our environment, or even a generous relationship. So thanks for being generous. I appreciate it. Okay, so here we're on the crossing point. We kind of laid the groundwork. Now we're entering the hero's journey. We're descending into the darkness. Tell me about a time when things really weren't working for you.
A few years ago, me and some of my friends, we had this big fight. We were getting ready for the summer weekend. In a few days, we're going to be going to the beach together. And then a few days before that, I get told that plans have been canceled or they have to be postponed. Now, back then, I was not very good with handling sudden changes in plans. And in as such, I kind of I blew up at them, really, just to put it simply. I threw a tantrum as a grown adult. I threw a tantrum, and I honestly, I as they continued to not entertain me and my tantrum, I just got angrier and angrier. Like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is not right. This isn't fair. Um, I I felt very righteous in this sense of like, well, you're not honoring my time by not communicating better ahead of time or not making things work. And and because it's disappointing when you have plans that you're looking forward to get canceled last minute. But also it's kind of just like something that happens in life. And I was just not willing to deal with it, and I made it their problem. And I don't remember all of what was said, but I do remember that I said things that I deeply regretted. And um, it put a big rift between me and them for a bit of time. In particular, one of the friends that was involved, um, we had previously um, we had previously had an agreement. Just we were in talks about possibly doing a business together where I make these digital designs because I'm an artist. I'll make these designs for stickers, and he can handle uh, the back end, like selling them, and marketing, like that sort of thing. And we'd be kind of in partnership with that. And this kind of threw a wrench in those plans. It's hard to be in partnership with someone when you have just torn them a new one, and for no good reason either. Like relatively, as if there's a good reason. You know what I mean? I it put a pause in our plans, and so that business idea kind of just sat on a shelf collecting dust for a while.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that, especially, the intensity of those moments that I've had in my life where I just kind of lose my temper and it doesn't generally go well. I haven't yet really learned a way to ventilate healthy anger, if that is a possibility. And I've also been learning maybe that even ventilation doesn't resolve the anger. Like even if I ventilate it, it's still there. It's still going to come up again. So finding a way to resolve, I guess, the anger, so it's not running in my relationships. Right? That's my future. So thanks for helping me see that. So there you are. It's this there's been this blow up. There's behavior that has really damaged or made it much harder to connect or create or do really any of the things that you were doing before with these people. And we might call it the abyss or something similar. And I'm curious, was there a moment when it really hit you? The impact really was there for you?
I would say this moment came shortly after the dust sort of settled, like after, everyone said what they said, and then suddenly, like, not really getting as much feedback, as much response back. Um, you kind of run out of steam when you're like, at least for me, I run out of steam when someone's no longer responding and to my anger, because then there's like nothing to respond back to. So then I'm just slowing down and then realizing what I've just said. Um, and realizing like the severity and how like just the weight of it, like if someone said these things to me, and again, I wish I remembered what I said. I just remember how what I felt about what I'd said. I remember feeling like if I had a friend who said any of these things to me, would I continue being friends with them and like, would these be friends that I would, I guess, in a wise mind, choose to continue and choose to maintain and feed? And like, it made me think, like, is this the kind of person I want to be? Is this how I want to continue to show up in my friendships? How many times can I do this before my friends just stop talking to me permanently? You know, um, I I felt very ashamed of myself, and I reached out to each that I had harmed, um, and I cleaned up my mess. I apologized. I made it clear that I understood that what I had said was in no way okay, in no way proportional to what I was upset about, and that um, while I felt frustrated because like the issue of last minute cancellations, it wasn't new. It's not a new issue that's been happening between us. It happens pretty much once a year. Some big thing that we're all wanting to do together, and some kind of last minute cancellation or change of plans, and my disappointment. Um, I realized that I needed to confront that in a different way. The anger was not the way. I didn't want my friends to essentially be afraid of me because they were afraid of how I would react to them. And I still wanted a solution to the problem of last minute cancellations. I just knew I had to find a different path forward. But first and foremost, I needed to repair the damage I had done. So having those conversations and, each individually, um, those were unique conversations because of what I had said. And thankfully, I repaired each relationship, and I would say not because of the conflict, but because of how I handled it, we have stronger bonds now.
It really hits you that there's this impact on your friendship. There's a possible fragility, a new fragility that's there. There's less communication with your friends. And during that period when it was difficult and you're still trying to figure out what the next step is, what wasn't working? In the sense of like, were people misunderstanding what you're going through? Were people trying to give you advice that wasn't working? What made things harder for you in that difficult time?
Felt like whatever my feelings were was just kind of not a non-issue for them, and it it's like my brain couldn't like compute that. I think that like what often like happened is like in any times like this kind of dynamic would pop up, there would be I would start getting angry, and then they might say, well, just calm down. And it's like that, I don't know many people for whom being told to calm down necessarily helps them calm. Um, and it felt often like they would be more trying to manage my emotions as opposed to engaging with what I was expressing frustration around. And so it was almost like a combination of the value of my emotions being diminished while also only seeing the emotions and not seeing what I was actually saying through the emotions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like they were trying to manage your emotions because it was uncomfortable to be present with the emotions instead of like either creating space for you to express yourself or like getting you or saying, "Hey, you look upset," you know, like any kind of a validation of where you're coming from versus a, "Hey, we don't, this isn't the right space. You're getting upset like that. You know, we gotta calm you down or whatever."
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
Okay, I get it, and and I've definitely had my own experiences, and so thanks for sharing it. And I think it's very relatable. I think many people have had experiences where they felt tamped down in their environment, or it wasn't safe to express, or whatever. So getting to witness people who do are able to express can be inspiring. So before we get too far across the crossing point from survival to conscious creation, just looking at the initial tingles that something is shifting, the very first shift, what's one thing you started to do differently that changed your direction?
I would pause and then reflect on the emotions and think about what's actually going on. Like try to articulate it, putting it into words, because that usually helped me to sort of untangle what was happening internally. Because there was anger and upset because of changed plans, and as I started to look, okay, what's upsetting? Okay, I feel like my time's not respected. I feel like my scheduling isn't respected, but can I go any deeper? Like what's more fundamental happening here that is having me be so upset? Because it just didn't make sense to me that a schedule or time, I mean, our time is important and valuable, but like it didn't make sense to me really that I would be so upset over that. As I looked, I could start to make um what I was starting to discern is that there was something about me and my importance and my relevance to my friends. There seemed to be something where it, through this pausing, I was able to find that there seemed to be something about not feeling like I mattered in a more of like fundamental way to my friends. So I guess it's almost like a sense of rejection. Like, so what I really found that was starting to make a difference was this, pausing to reflect and dig deep and look within myself as opposed to just immediately start to get mad and try to, in some ways, kind of be dominating over my friends, um, looking inward first and kind of, discerning here and then bringing this more refined thing outward so that way I can have a actual productive conversation.
Wow, that's awesome. So I really got there, Elliot, that the shift was instead of just reflexively allowing ventilation, there was some like a pause and an internal looking. Maybe sometimes we're not perfect, maybe something still came out, but at least there was a willingness to take a look. That's
Yeah.
great. Thanks for being willing. Okay, so here we are. You've just noted, you're starting to notice this shift. You're starting to see possibility. And then here we are. We're entering the key moment of this entire conversation, the crossing point. Was there a moment where you knew things were going to change? What felt differently? What felt different? What became possible?
Mm. Uh, and this is probably my favorite thing that I get to share. I think the moment where I knew things were going to change was when, as I was starting to take on this pausing thing and sharing more level-headedly about what I was feeling and where I was coming from, I actually noticed that friends who had previously been more closed off emotionally from me were starting to open up. And one of the friends, I had actually, we had had a very, I would say, our friendship has been particularly tumultuous. A lot of butting heads, and I'll own it. I would say I probably mostly butt heads with him, as opposed to it being reciprocal. It was just anyway, he he actually told me that man, and I don't know if I can recall the words exactly, but something to the effect of that that I was one of his best friends and that he felt like he could like be real with me and that I'm not going to freak out on him or make him bad for what he has shared. And like that's huge. He doesn't really open up to any of us like that. Or at least he's never opened up to me like that. And that was really touching. And our friendship has continued to open up and like that moment that kind of made me realize like oh like how I'm showing up really kind of sets up what our friendship can be.
Like, what was it that made a difference that got you through that experience, and even into maybe a higher level of relationship or life?
Yeah. So obviously the pausing made a big difference. It gave me sort of access to being able to have these more meaningful conversations with my friends and allowed us to have more effective conflict resolution. But I would actually say that the biggest difference in all of this, like even kind of permeating through that, is the it's been the ability to put myself in the shoes of them, think about how this is all looking like from their perspective, where they're coming from, what they may need on a more fundamental level, like spiritually, socially, emotionally. Like I, it's like I understand I'm not necessarily responsible for anyone else's personal fulfillment or anything, but it's sort of more like if I can see like where someone's at. If I can understand where someone's at, I can keep that in mind when I engage with them. You know, if I know that someone is, struggling emotionally and they may not feel safe to be vulnerable, but we all need, I would say that all people need a safe space, community, whatever, to be able to share with, then how can I offer that here in a way that honors both of us, you know? Because also, I grew up with the sentiment from my mom of like, don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And so it's like it's this now this dance, being able to engage in this dance where I can look at what the people around me need and see how I can make that work while also making while also honoring myself in that process.
We're almost complete in this hero's journey of your transformation of your relationships in your own environment. And what I'm curious about is what's different about your life now.
My friendships are much better. There's just, I mean, better doesn't even really capture it properly. They're new relationships. Um, and I I have a new level of being able to share with them and being able to hear them. And it's expanded to pretty much all of my relationships, including new budding ones. With new friends that I make when I'm out with community. Um, it has also enhanced my confidence, in the sense that like I would always feel ashamed after I've had these lashing out. It made me feel less like a grown adult. I had this sort of, feeling of like, well, only, kids lash out like this, which even though I intellectually know that that's not the case. I've known plenty of adults that may lash out. It's almost part of the like human experience. But it regardless of reality, I felt ashamed of it. And so being able to have drastically reduced um, the times where my emotions get the better of me like that, it has made me feel a lot more solid in myself and in my capacity to engage with hardship as well. And it's also enhanced my ability of, I would say, empathy to others. Um, like, because I would say, have more judgment for people who lash out like that. Um, and I feel like I have a lot more understanding now because it's very hard to find a path out of it that is not just internalizing and allowing it to do harm internally instead. Being able to transmute it. That's it's a journey that I would say is, it's difficult to find. So I have a lot more understanding for those types of people. And I feel that that also allows me to connect more deeply with people, um, because a lot of people I know have talked about dealing with that in some way or another, whether they dish out their anger in these rage outs or if they dish it out in a little bit of pettiness that they sprinkle around with people, doing more subtle things to, get their licks in, I feel like I'm able to better understand that too, and better able to engage with it in a way that's not judgmental, but like engaging with, they have a need that is not getting met clearly. And I want them to have their needs met. So how can I best set the stage for them to get that? I feel like I just relate with people fundamentally differently now. Like I feel much more connected.
Well, that's a huge win. I mean, to have dealt with the problem of what it sounds like this behavior that wasn't working, and finding that it wasn't working, discovering that, and then doing the work to shift your behavior so you get the relationships you want in your life instead of, the misery that you were creating and probably not even admitting to yourself that you're creating it. So, well done. Appreciate it. Great story. Okay, just in our final stages, we're just rising up. We're seeing the sky. The sun's out. From the standpoint of expansion and community, what is now possible for you with people and community that wasn't possible before?
Um, I would say what's possible now that wasn't possible before is my ability to be a contribution. Now, it's not that I couldn't have been a contribution before. I just think I was way too in my own head about my ability to deal with difficulties. And something I've learned through other people who have been way more active in community is that there's a lot of conflict that can arise, a lot of butting heads because, maybe two organizations who are supposed to be serving the same group, they've got personality conflicts, and that's interfering with their ability to co-work and create.
And do you have some examples? Like, are there organizations that you're involved in? Like, can you get us on the ground and like what you're going to say or what you have been saying now that you've got this new ability?
Yeah, so the our local Pride center, I have learned from the gentleman who runs it. His name's Will. He has shared with us experiences where he has reached out to other local queer organizations because there's technically several. There's some that have maybe been started by younger people, and they're more like they might have a different specific focus. Will, the main organizer of our local Pride Center, he has shared with us experiences he's had when going out in the community to try to network and engage to, for example, get sponsorship and funding for events, do collaborations. He's also gone to the local uh, political places like City Hall, to try to talk with our local representatives about ways that we can actually like um, organize on a more like city level way, like having parades or that kind of stuff. And he has shared with us that unfortunately, in some of these interactions, he has had very nasty language slung his way, some of which I will not mention just because of the quality of the language. But other things that I can mention is, he was spoken to as if he is a security threat, um, just for showing up and standing up for what he believes in. And I think it takes something to be in that kind of position to be faced with that and still show up every day and still, put yourself out there going and talking with people and connecting and still showing up to those political spaces to say, here's who I am, here's what I'm committed to, And I'm asking that you share in this commitment with me because it's important for our community. So I see that, and I believe that I am, well, while I am not, I would say I'm not quite to the level of being contribution like him. I mean, we all sing his praises all the time. He's an amazing, phenomenal person who's also he's very strong and also still so full of love, which is impressive. It's easy to get jaded when you experience those things. I feel like I am much closer to being someone who could do something like that than who I was before. Because I think before I was more interested in my personal survival than what I could actually do, like what I'm capable of, and how I can bring that to the community and make a difference, and take on some of that emotional brunt. I actually think I can deal with that better now than before.
Right on. I can see that. I mean, you spoke about gaining empathy for people that are triggered or, ventilating some unpleasant words. And now you've got empathy for the people on the other side, the people who are ventilating, the words at you perhaps, or somebody in your community. So thanks for building that capacity. Just as we complete the journey together, where can you find gratitude? What has made this whole journey worth it?
The grace, the grace of everyone in my life, my friends, like they've all stuck with me through repeated rage outs and have been willing to not bend to it and not disrespect themselves by bending to it. They've been able to stay true to who they've been through all of this and keep me as a friend and grow with me. Um, Family too. Um, because of this, because of this growth, I've been now able to hear things from my family that I couldn't hear before because they thought that I was too delicate to hear it. So now my relationship with my family has deepened, and I mean, the grace of all the people I have relationships with to have seen who I've been and have stuck with me and stand for me and my growth, that is priceless to me. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. That's really lovely. I really appreciate you sharing all that, and especially just getting to understand how what a difference is made and how it's affecting your life now in this positive way through the transition from what was life like before and the crossing point. And this is what the crossing point is all about: real people, real conversations, and their journey from survival into something more. Thank you for sharing something real.
Awesome.